In this series of videos, we're going to be learning about the process known as stellar evolution, which details the birth, growth, life, and death of stars, including that of the sun in our solar system. The force that causes the birth of the star is the same force that holds a star together and causes planets to orbit the star in a solar system, which of course is gravity. So gravity causes groups of interstellar gas and dust to accumulate into singular structures that we call nebulas, or nebula is the singular term, and the plural term for this is technically pronounced nebulae. And nebulae produce very beautiful images when viewed through a telescope like this. When the gas and dust begin to accumulate into a single dense structure in a nebulae, we say that a protostar, that being a structure that resembles the beginning of the star, is beginning to form, as seen in the bright center of this nebula here. Now, whether the protostar successfully forms into a true star depends on whether the star accumulates enough mass, that being enough hydrogen and helium gas, in order to start the reaction that a star uses to produce energy, that being nuclear fusion. Now, a large number of protostars don't actually get to this point. They don't gain enough mass in order to start generating energy through nuclear fusion by themselves, so instead form structures like this one here, which are what we call brown dwarfs. Now, a brown dwarf is not quite a star, but it's also significantly larger than a gas giant planet such as Jupiter, and so they form a kind of intermediate between a star and a large gas giant. If, however, a star gains enough hydrogen and helium in its mass in order to start producing energy through nuclear fusion, we can say that a true star has formed and enters a period in the star's life which is what we call the main sequence. Now, the main sequence of a star is the longest lasting part in the star's evolution or in the star's life cycle, but not every star takes on the same form. For example, the three stars here, this small red structure here, the star represented by our sun, and a larger whitish blue star, the brightest star in the northern sky, Sirius, are all examples of main sequence stars. We start over here on the left with the smallest example of a main sequence star, and also by far the most common type of star that exists in our galaxy. This small main sequence star is what we call a red dwarf star, which can be not all that much bigger than the planet of Jupiter. Now, the sun is actually an example of a small to medium-sized example of main sequence star, whereas this large whitish blue star, Sirius, the brightest star visible in the northern sky, is an example of a larger than average main sequence star. Now, depending on the size of the main sequence star, this is going to affect how the star develops in the later halves of its life cycle. Although, as mentioned before, the main sequence of a star's life cycle is by far the longest lasting part, and by longest we mean that main sequence stars exist in this form for over 10 billion years on average. In part 2 of this video, we're going to look at how a main sequence star enters the final stages of its life by forming giant stars, and how stars eventually die.